Welcome to our congregational meeting. I am Pastor Deborah Brady. Welcome to those of you online, both live with us now or watching across time, learning about what's going on here. So thank you for being here. So the purpose of our gathering today, we've been announcing over the past few weeks, but I want to just reiterate that our entrepreneurial director of Methodist Tiny Tots, Barbara Alvarado. Yes, we can clap for her. She discovered and applied for a grant from the California Department of Social Services Children's Division, and we were notified in late May that we were awarded a $1.77 million grant to expand our preschool and daycare center to include infant care. So this was kind of a surprise for us. We knew Barbara was applying, but she's applied for other grants and we haven't even gotten a call back. So we were kind of like, yeah, good luck with that. We'll pray for you. Yeah, on with her. So this was really good news. And so our leadership team decided that before we got too far along in the process, we wanted to provide an opportunity for our congregation to just hear about what's happened, to explain the process we think we're going to use, because it's a process, it's a plan, they change, but and to receive as much information as we have about it. So we're not making any decisions today. There will be decisions to come. We'll announce those opportunities to gather for future decision making, but we will have a time for question and answers at the end. So we have a couple of different speakers that will tell you about different things about this. In fact, the agenda you can see here, we'll hear an overview of our program, the need for infant care. We're going to talk about the process, the vision, and then I'll walk around with a handheld mic to get any comments you want to make or any questions, and we'll be collecting those to make sure that we integrate that in our future planning and decision-making processes. So, let's pray as we get started. Oh God, we thank you for the privilege of serving our community through providing a preschool and daycare center. We offer ourselves to you with eager anticipation about an expanded ministry that you might be calling us to. It feels overwhelming to consider and also exciting. And we can't do this without your own guidance and inspiration and equipping us for the challenges of the process ahead. We give thanks for every person who has gathered here today, for we must endeavor all of this as a people, as a congregation. We ask your blessing on this time together, that in the telling of the process, in the comments and questions and our listening, that your creative spirit will weave us together so that we might be excellent in the ways that you guide us. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. So our next sections are going to be guided not only by our Tiny Tots director, and you'll see sometimes us abbreviating this as MTT, so I always like to explain our acronyms: Methodist Tiny Tots, our director, Barbara Alvarado, who's served us for 2 years, and our new preschool board chair, Lynn Dickerson. So I welcome them now.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you just a little history of our Methodist Tiny Tots. It began in 1966, so we've been doing this a long time, as a Mother's Day Out program. So that was an extension ministry of our church school program, and Edith Burchell was our very first teacher and director. And the program was one morning a week to start with, and then it moved to 2 mornings a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9:30 to 1 o'clock. So it was just a little way for moms to have a little time to themselves and drop their kids off for some good, Christian instruction and care. And so in the early years, various members of our church served as the director and the teaching staff. It was, starting out, it was not the professional program it is today. Barbara and I are going to tag team this. So.
So over the years, the ministry has grown to a full-time preschool and daycare center. We're open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. I am a full-time director at the preschool, and we have 4 full-time teachers and 1 part-time teacher to help serve the program we have right now. We're licensed now for 42 children at the site, ages 2 to 5, okay? We currently are serving 45 families and 53 children between the ages of 2 and 6. Licensing allows us to take care of the children until they enter 1st grade. So some of them are starting to turn 6, have come back for the summer with us. We use a curriculum that will prepare our students to succeed in kindergarten, and I'm really careful to help support and create a developmentally appropriate program here at Tiny Tots.
So our church has understood Tiny Tots really to have 2 purposes. One is it serves our community by providing quality education and care for preschool children. And if you've ever been a working parent, you know that that is an incredibly important piece of family life. And it also allows us to be in relationship with young families and invite them into relationship with God and support their spiritual lives. So for example, Pastor Deborah leads 2 chapel services each Wednesday morning with the children.
And I have to add that the children just love our chapel time with Pastor Deborah. She makes it fun and engaging. They learn to pray, and they're starting to develop a relationship with God, which I think is very important at this young age. MTT currently uses the classrooms, the office, the bathroom, and storage spaces between the 2 locked double doors down the hall here on the 1st floor. In addition, we use the playground along the 16th Street, which is vital to our learning environment. We have indoor and outdoor classrooms now, which was really promoted during the pandemic to have the children engage in activities outside, learning activities outside. So we set that up every morning. It takes us about an hour to set it up. We have a commercial kitchen down here for some food preparation, and the fellowship hall is used for recreation during inclement weather. If it's too hot, too cold, we have bad air quality days, we use it. And also for special events like the spaghetti dinner, our Christmas program, Mother's Day tea, things like that. Fundraisers, and graduation. We had graduation there just recently.
So now we're going to talk about the need for infant care. The need for infant care in Stanislaus County has been identified by all levels of government, federal, state, and county. I don't know if you've read in the Bee recently about this new Stand 2030 initiative that's underway, but one of the things that uncovered was the need for child care is a critical component of creating and growing better jobs and supporting economic development in our county. I checked with my friend Tony Jordan, who oversees the Child and Family Services at the Stanislaus County Office of Education, to ask him about the need for infant care in our area. And just in our zip code, just in 95354, there were more than 500 spots needed, more than are available. So that's pretty significant, as you can imagine. Our sister congregation, Centenary, for instance, does provide infant care, and they have a capacity for 9 babies and a waiting list of 20 right now.
Our current space configuration is insufficient to accommodate infant care. I did work with licensing and look at it, and the space we have available just isn't there. State licensing requires more space per child for children under 2 years because we need to accommodate for the cribs. So we need 35 square foot per child for classroom space, and we need basically the same to accommodate all the cribs in one room, okay? The staffing ratios are lower for infants from newborn through 24 months, and it is a 1-to-4 teacher ratio.
As Pastor Deborah mentioned a few minutes ago, Barbara did take the initiative to apply for this grant with the Children's Division of the California Department of Social Services. And one of the unusual things about this grant is that it includes funds for building construction, administration, staffing, material, equipment, and supplies. So it really is a pretty comprehensive grant, which would be necessary because obviously we don't really have the funds for all those things without it. So in consultation with the Board of Trustees, the application was with the goal of adding 24 more children on site between birth and 36 months.
Expanding our services to include infant care meets the needs of the family in our community, especially those with multiple children. Families can rely on our care from birth to school readiness. The scale and flexibility of the grant eliminates the need for the church to fund such an expansion from our own financial resources. The MTT board is committed to financial sustainability without relying on the church's normal operating budget for subsidies.
So now I would like to introduce Dick Shanks and Richard Stone from our Board of Trustees to explain the next steps in this process.
The process. Before the grant is finalized, the California state budget must be approved. The California Department of Social Services will begin with awards with recipients of a score of 70 or higher. Our Tiny Tots program had a score of 83. The grant will formalize a legal contract for funding for The grant will formalize a legal contract for funding for FUMC to sign. The contract stimulates the use of the building, will be operating an infant care facility for 10 years. FUMC will have legal support ensuring we understand and can comply with all the requirements before we enter the contract with CDSS. It is important FUMC follows the Methodist Book of Discipline requirements for approval of a remodel or a new building. One of our solutions could involve construction of a new building in the rear of the church. As required, a study committee has been appointed. The members are Lynn Dickerson, chairperson for the Modesto Tiny Tots, Barbara Alvarado, director for Modesto Tiny Tots, Will DeBoard, FUMC lay leader and secretary, Arvin Berner, director of music, Emily Bryant, Sunday school coordinator and Modesto Tiny Tots parent, Matt Westendox, finance chairperson, and Bud Young from the Board of Trustees. The study committee will summarize the needs for our ministry expansion. The study committee, working with our council on ministries and administrative board, will articulate our goals and ministry strategy and identify any specific requirements such as accessibility and ensuring our current Tiny Tots program can continue during the construction phase. The information gathered by the study committee shall form the basis of a report to be presented to the charge conference, to be used by an authorized building committee and become a part of the report to the district board of the church, location and building, and district superintendent for approval. The charge conference is the official decision-making body for the congregation. It consists of all the members of the administrative board, retired clergy for whom we are the charge conference, the UWF president and the membership secretary, and the district superintendent, who chooses a presiding elder to conduct the meeting. Meetings and agenda are announced at least 10 days before, 10 days in advance, so all members can attend, observe, and ask questions.
Richard Stone, Vice Chairperson of the Board of Trustees, and I am continuing the process. The study committee's report will be handed off to a building committee, including materials that will be presented to the district superintendent and to the board, church, location, and building, who must provide oversight and approval to the FUMC's project. The nominating committee, working with the Board of Trustees and the Tiny Tots Board, will nominate a building committee. The members of the building committee includes trustees, church members, Tiny Tot parents, and community leaders. We are fortunate to have some skilled parents in our program who would bring excellent knowledge and experience to an infant care project. Pastor Deborah will request the district superintendent to call a special charge conference to elect this building committee. If you are interested in serving, please let Pastor Deborah know. The building committee, using the data from the study committee, will consider viable options to accommodate an infant care ministry. The building committee will make a recommendation which will be reviewed by the state preschool licensing agency and approved by a charge conference of the congregation. In addition, the proposal will be approved by the district board, church, location, and building, and the district superintendent. It is likely that the most cost-effective solution would be to build a new building in the empty space behind the church, connect it via hallways or a portico to the space we currently use for the preschool ministry. The building committee will hire an architect and other professionals needed to construct or the construction of and administration of the project. Both the Board of Trustees and the Tiny Tots Board will receive regular reports from the building committee and make reports to the administrative board. The start of the project is hard to estimate. There are many variables unknown at this time. Our hope is that it would be ready for construction next year.
So we do have a slide that says timing, question mark, because that is one of the frequent questions that we get, but it's difficult to, there's a lot of things out of our control, of course. But we do hope to hear by mid or late July from the Department of Social Services about whether they are indeed moving forward with our funding. So we hope to hear by then, and we hope to be moving on with specific things by the fall. So as I've been praying about this, it seems to me that in addition to the obvious benefit to our community, that this particular grant gives us an opportunity as a congregation to revisit our ministry strategy with regard to Tiny Tots. So Lynn talked about kind of historically the ways we've thought about this, but I've noticed that from time to time, it's easy for us as a congregation to slip into sort of a landlord mentality with regard to our preschool. So you can hear the language of, we are doing this and they are doing that, or they want us to do this. And so I've noticed as I've returned a little bit of us and they in the way that we speak about the ministry. And, you know, probably due to COVID and all of the things that we've been through over the last 3 years, there's been a little bit of a disconnect. Now, that's not to say that we've ignored them. There has always been a committed group, primarily of women in our church, who've served on the board, who've kept touch, who've, helped us with fundraisers. So there has been a deep commitment, but I am talking about sort of a broader based understanding of looking at Tiny Tots as a central, maybe a leading strategic ministry plan for this church. So one of the hopes, of course, is that through our preschool ministry, that these parents would see us as their faith community and begin to come to church, grow in their discipleship, and participate. But we have sort of noticed a trend over the last 40 years that sort of passive relationship doesn't work, right? Always, there's at least one, maybe two families who are engaged. But by and large, you know, these 46 families, who some have churches, but some are spiritual. They want their children to be here, but they aren't particularly engaged with any particular church. And so that passive strategy hasn't really worked. And so sometimes we say, well, why don't they come? Why don't we have a sign out front. They know we worship at 10. Why don't they show up? So one of the things that I will be inviting our leadership teams to think about is, what would it be like if we reoriented ourselves to see that group of families and that space as our primary mission field for discipleship? That instead of expecting them to come and adapt to what we are doing, we can keep doing what we're doing, but what would it be like if our main activity was to reorient ourselves to building relationship with those families? We have 46 families who come to our church property 2 to 5 days a week, right? That is astounding, right? What would it be like if we started having some listening opportunities to ask parents what they need for their family to thrive? What questions do they have about their faith formation and spiritual lives? How is it that we could support them in building worship and spiritual traditions for their families? What would it be like if we spent time according to what is convenient for them, instead of expecting them to adapt to what we're already doing? So these are the kind of questions I'm going to be raising for our congregation, and continue to put some pressure on us to think about our future in terms of disciple making. So I hope that you will continue to pray about this, to pray for God's leading, to weave us together as we move forward. It's natural for tension to be in this process, right? And so I always get nervous if we have a meeting and no one asks a question or no one objects to the sort of the group think that is going on. Because we do our best thinking when there's a little bit of tension in the process, where someone goes, well, wait a minute, have we considered these other options? Maybe there's a better way to do it. We can do that with love without forming factions and getting into a war about it, but it's normal to have tension in the process. It's normal to have challenges. It's normal for the whole group to get discouraged and go, why are we doing this? Whose idea was this anyway, right? So I want us all to be prepared that those are all normal things when we take on a big project. So now I'm going to come down with the microphone. This is an opportunity for any of you to ask a question or make a comment, and especially because this helps guide our process. And let's see, Darren, I forgot to ask you this. I'm wondering, do you have your cell phone with you? Could you open up our Facebook page to the church's Facebook page? An online community, if you would like to submit a question, open up your Facebook, go to the church's Facebook page, and you can enter questions in the chat space. That will only work if you're doing this live, of course. We'll look at it later and get some recorded comments later too. So I'm going to come down now. So it's always nerve-wracking to be the first person to speak up. So somebody pray for courage and bravery right now. Okay. All right. I have a red button here. Does that mean it's a low battery? All right.
Hi. So
What's your name?
My name is Leslie Williams.
Okay.
And I know we have a lot of space on the second floor of the building, and I guess I'm just assuming something, so I'm asking the question. I'm assuming because it's second floor space, accessibility is an issue, and that's why we're not looking at expansion up there. Is that correct? And are there other things?
We'll hear from Barbara, and then
Are there
maybe
other
one of the
things we
trustees.
could use the space upstairs for that might help with the space requirements needed downstairs?
Could you turn on the mic for the lectern, please? Our sound guy.
Is it on? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So Leslie, we did do this. I tried to, we moved forward to try and get a school-age program. I fixed the room. The room had been kind of chaotic before. Licensing had combined on our license to have preschool and school-age. And then they wanted to separate the license. We went through the complete fire marshal drama on this for using the space upstairs. And in the end, it was just something that was unavailable. Specifically for infants and toddlers, it makes it an unusable space because of you need to have quick access out the door should an emergency occur. So we need to be on a ground level, we need to have ramps. They have emergency evacuation cribs for infants where you can put like up to 4 of them in one crib and then scoot them right out if the need should arise. So it was simply safety, and we could not accommodate any of the infants and really the preschoolers either. We almost were there for school-age program, but they wanted the entire congregation and everyone who came into the building to be fingerprinted, immunized, mandated reporter training, the whole night. And it was just too big of a fish for us.
Yes.
Okay?
Any of the trustees want to make a comment about the second floor? I'll start spouting off if you don't, So one of the things that we're going to look at and talk to the state about in terms of the grant is whether this grant could be used for the church ministry to reconfigure some of the space we use that would make more first floor space available to the preschool and infant care. So if we could reconfigure the space to put in elevators, sprinklers, safe windows, stairs that conform to current guidelines. As you know, if you've ever walked up and down the stairs, you know that they do not meet current building requirements. So we think that there's funding available within that size of grant to do that. So could they understand that we could move some of our ministry upstairs and make it accessible so that more first floor space would be available to the preschool and make it safer and meet all the licensing requirements? So it's possible this grant could configure it. We've had some initial conversations. So both the study and building committees will be looking at those options as we enter the contract with the state as well. All right. Where's the microphone? Thank you. Let me know if there's any online questions that come in. Okay, Carl, then you can pass it to Lynette. So go ahead, stand. It's the microphone. Is it still red? I think it died. There, no, it's there.
Okay. I'm Carl Morris. I'm treasurer for Tiny Tots and the church, but I have a kind of a follow-up related question to that. Isn't it likely that building codes or permitting requirements would require us to do some upgrades to our existing building if we do an attachment for the infant care program?
According to the first architect I talked to, he says we will not have to upgrade this building if we put a new building in the back. That's not part of it. There are certain things we would have to do. I think the sewage system would have to be upgraded greatly. Some other things that we would want to do that probably need to be done anyway, but that would just help do that. As far as the upper room, we talked about an elevator, and they're talking about $400,000 for the elevator. And it would have to be located somewhere where it would be central, like in the stairwell here would be the most logical place for it, which might even raise the price even higher. So it's a lot of unknowns. That's some things that's just going to have to examine by the two groups, by the committees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Go ahead, Lynette.
Hello, everyone. Lynette Grandison. So a couple things thinking about. This is wonderful news, and I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for our church to meet these families. And so that's one just joy. In the news recently, they've talked about living wage for this group of workers. And so I'm hoping and praying that will be part of our strategy to, I'm hoping that we will be trailblazers in this industry, or people call them systems. And so I want us to look out of the box and, you know, offering a living wage.
To our staff, you mean?
To our staff. So that's one thing I'm thinking of. The other thing is in my work, when parents send their babies off to childcare, it is very emotional. And so I'm hoping and praying that as part of our staff, that if we do not have a specific deacon that's on our staff, that we have at least a family therapist as part of the people. I mean, yes, it's us too, but it's just really important as we think about our mental health crisis that's going on right now. It's a really great opportunity just to build this and to help these families just deal with the stress of, you know, having a baby and changing their family and sending them off to school, you know, daycare. So that's what I'm thinking of. But I'm really excited, and that's what I wanted to have. And I think it'll be a good opportunity just to sit down with people, not just the people who come, but maybe even before, sit down with some families and just say, like, what do you wish for in your childcare? And so we can, you know, have their side of it instead of just our side of it.
Right, thank you. Great comments. I think that I just want to reinforce what you're saying about the potential ministries of the church. As you know, we've talked about revamping our Stephen Ministry program. What if we made Stephen ministers available to parents as they're going through that transition of leaving their kids for the first time, for example? And we also have a list of therapists to refer people to, things like that. Yeah, not enough. Yeah, all right. Make sure the green button's on. There you
Yeah,
go. Okay.
excuse me, I'm a loud talker here. I wanted to ask you,
Kate Nygaard is
what's
speaking.
going on, if anything, in our small chapel, which is on the first floor? In other words, is that something that we could, use with this thing? I mean, do we use that chapel very much?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that the study and building committee and the trustees need to do is kind of look at all of the space and how it's, you know, can be repurposed. The chapel is used fairly regularly. Of course, a lot of the space in our building is not used that much right now, but we use the chapel for Tiny Tots chapel services on Wednesday morning for a little over an hour. We have 2 different chapel services. And then we are using the chapel for weddings and funerals that are small, and for prayer services, Ash Wednesday, things like that. But, sorry?
Well, it was just kind of,
We use it quite often for recitals too. The Modesto Area Teachers Association, music teachers use it, Music Teacher Association, yeah.
and I just want to confirm with what you said. I was a chair, welcome, Lynn, for 10 years, and then another 8 years or something. We never really did engage with the parents very much. We had the dinner once a year, but, you know, that's not really engaged so the parents can get to know the other parent, you know, so that they know who they
Building
have
a
friends that
community.
they make. And I noticed that with my own children, that they sometimes, or my grandson and my daughter, they still, after all these years, and their kids are in their late 20s or 30s now, they still are very close friends with the people that they met in preschool. It just so happens that in my family, the first one, my daughter was living in LA, and then my grandson was living in LA at different times, but they ended up going to the same preschool, you know, through the years, and they still have that friendship, and we haven't developed that at all. And I think that would bring the people into the church more, because that wasn't part of it. And you're right, I got very keyed up about the fact that I'd say, is this preschool a mission for us? Which I think it is. Or is it just like a, you know, something you have downtown next to the grocery store or something? It doesn't have any connection with us. And I do think that it should, but I've been out of it for a while, so I don't know what Barbara's done, and she brings a lot of ideas. I was interviewing her when she
Yes.
came. And so I know, I hear really good things about you in the community and what the kids are learning, and so I'm happy about that. But I do think that you're right. We need to get the parents so that they can have some time, in the evening or in the, whenever it's Saturday morning, I don't know, with the working time. So they can get to know the other parents, and the kids can play with the other parents can get to know the other children, and it becomes a really nice friendship situation. And the religious part of it just happens naturally if you do that.
Thank you,
I
Kate.
think.
Let's see
But-
what Barbara wants to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara.
So over the past year, I think after the spaghetti dinner, when everyone was so high on that fun event, we decided to start doing more events similar to that, where parents can connect and talk to each other, let the children play together. So since that time, we've had, our normal Valentine parties, but we had our big Christmas program this year. We had our Valentine party. We just got off of preschool graduation where all the families came and they brought their families and they brought their friends. And then we had a Father's Day event where we actually barbecued hot dogs and had chips, and the parents just stayed and talked and played with their children. I put a lot of the pictures, as many as I could, into the newsletter this time. We had Drum Love come in, so the parents were invited to come join their children with Drum Love. We had our Mother's Day tea. We're planning on the spaghetti dinner again, which is a big project, of course. And we do Thanksgiving Chapel, and we have our Fall Festival, and we'll have our Christmas program again. So I am trying to, hopefully like once a month or at least every other month, bring the families in. And they really, really responded well to the Father's Day event. And moms came too. We took lots of pictures. There was lots of laughing and joy in the preschool and connection, which I think is super important for families. And you're right, my daughter, the same thing. I had home daycare when she was little, and we know the kids now still as they are grown up.
I do want to give Barbara a shout out because she's sort of figured out the right timing to have these events. And so the first time when we made that shift was for our Christmas program, which we did in the fellowship hall on the stage with costumes and all the things. And we had over twice as many people show up as we were prepared for seating. So we had 125 people or something like that come.
Yeah, at least. It was standing room
150,
only.
like grandparents, and the place was packed. And as she said, this is what's happening with all of our events, the same for our graduation. And so the families are doing what Kate was saying, is when we've provided them an opportunity, they have relished the opportunity to gather intergenerationally. So Wendy, yes. Yeah, how do we show ourselves what's going on, right? One of the wonderful things that Barbara has introduced is an application called Brightwill. And so the children have pictures taken of them all day long and posted on this app so the families can capture these pictures of what their kids are doing and learning. And so they take pictures in chapel, at their different learning activities, outside gardening and building things. And so that is another way the families are kind of engaged. So we need to think about how do we bring a Brightwill experience to our congregation so we see too. So Wendy Nipper, I'm so glad to see you here today. You know, Wendy was the director of Tiny Tots at a time when the things she knew and was working on in education, she took us to the next level in terms of complying with different state licensings for the preschool. So Wendy, thank you, and I know you have some comments or questions.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let's go. Let's hear
I'll
it.
keep some of them, but there's more to the history of Tiny Tots
Of
than
course.
the few moments that was given to it.
Correct.
It has had a different perspective than some might have about it.
Mhm.
Need to read the book.
No. You know what? Of course, there is stuff written about Tiny Tots. It's available to the congregation, but we didn't want to take up a lot of time with the history just to say when we started, right? That we started simply and we've grown to sophistication. Yeah.
I'm interested in the business plan for this endeavor of expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Infant care is the most expensive form of child care out there.
Right.
And Tiny Tots blooms well for a while, and then as things in the community change and the economy changes, the situation, financial situation for Tiny Tots also changes. And I don't know how much thought has been given to the financial plan to make this a financial lasting success. If it needs to be going for 10 years, I worry.
Yes.
And that's a big thing, because what is being constructed, whether it's an interior remodel or an exterior addition, is a lasting thing. And the church needs to be prepared to somehow find a use for it, pay off the debt if it doesn't succeed for the 10 years. But a 10-year plan is not unreasonable if you're being reasonable about your expectations and income. Knowing how many requests are out there for infant care is not a true indication of what the demand is, because people who are seeking infant care will put their name on every list that will accept an addition of a wait list. So I remember a statistics class I had, how to lie with statistics. So you have to be very, very cautious about using statistics to support your expansion in a particular area.
Thank you. Anybody up there want to speak to this?
Well, I think Carl and I can both speak to this, so should we give it to Carl next?
Pass the microphone up here. We'll give it back if you want to ask some more.
As part of the grant application, we were asked to address that very question on ongoing viability, and because, again, we were committed to financing ongoing operations of this must be covered by the tuition from the operation itself, and it came out very favorable. The tuition for an infant program is, of course, much higher than for a older preschool program because of the 4-to-1 ratio required. But we looked at, as best we could, projected costs of operating costs, incremental operating costs for this program, and what kind of tuition we could charge that would be in line with other tuitions in the area, and it looked like it was very financially viable.
Lynn, I'll go
And
forward.
I just got off of a 3-hour, I guess it was a webinar, where the state of California is coming in, and they have been asking for input and input and input from preschools and daycare, family daycares. And what they're trying to do by 2025 is to bring the cost up, because they are offering universal preschool. And so what they want to do is they want to pay for the students out there, make up the difference, and bring up the wage and the tuition to be a functional wage where we can pay these people and they can have what they need, and the parents can have what they need and not go broke going to work because they had children. And so it's a very, it's huge. It's huge, the changes that are coming to preschool right now. And they are bringing it in. They've been working on it for years and years. Wendy, you and I both know that the state was working on this for years and years, and they haven't addressed it that much. But during the pandemic, they realized that if parents do not have care for their children, they do not go to work. So, and we still want to have children.
Right. We do get regular calls about infant care still, people asking about it. So we know that there is a need, and Wendy, I would expect that when we come to the charge conference to approve this, that there will be a business plan submitted, because you're right, it's very easy to be overly idealistic about this. And infant care is very expensive to do because of the staff ratios and many other space requirements, etc. So it's a very good question, and I do expect you to be one of the people holding tension about that right, in the process, because we don't want to enter this contract and take the money and then not be able to carry it off, get over our heads. Lynn, you're going to say something? Yeah.
I was just going to say, we actually, Wendy, we think that this will do the opposite of what you're fearful of, because right now we've sort of let our current Tiny Tot structure fall behind a little bit of the going rates for tuition for preschool, and we see this as an opportunity to start off right and be able to charge market rate for infant care based on, you know, this tremendous need that we believe is out there in the community. And we see it as a pipeline to be able to, you know, get children into our preschool program at the going rate, at the market rate that covers the cost, and then they feed into the preschool, and hopefully then we end up having them for, you know, 5 or 6 years. So we think this really does have the potential to bolster the entire program as we try to bring the other rates that are a little bit behind where they should be up to market rate over time.
Lynn, why don't you say, while you're here, a little bit about some things the board's going to be thinking about in terms of how do we serve lower income families? Because you have to be fairly high earner to afford all this childcare.
Right. So, you know, one of the things that I think we have, maybe where we have erred in the past, is that we've sort of structured our program as if we were serving only kind of low-income families. And the truth is, we're not. We're serving doctors, lawyers, and consultants, and architects, and, you know, a lot of professionals in our community who have the ability to pay market rate for their child care. And so my hope and goal is that we can get Tiny Tots to a sustainable level. You know, our church is not in the position to supplement child care for these families. We really need Tiny Tots to be able to cover its own cost and have a sustainable financial model. And the thought being that if we charge market rate and we end up with a little bit of excess cash flow every month, that can be set aside to fund things like a scholarship program for families that perhaps can't afford the going rate. But then, you know, the bulk of the folks pay the going rate, and then you've got this fund that if a family falls on hard times, which right now we have 2 families who've had, you know, work-related accidents or whatever and weren't able to pay for a while. So we'd have this little bucket of money over here that we accumulate over time by being financially solvent and, you know, having a little bit of excess cash flow every month that we could then use to fund families, you know, a scholarship program or a one-time emergency fund for families that need something. And we would just be in a much healthier financial position to weather the ups and downs of enrollment and you know, things that happen over time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, for bringing that up. We'll have Carl cover his ears. So that would be a great thing for our church family to know about things like that we can pray for these families. And, you know, like we have to pass the hat in the back of the church or something like that. I mean, that would be a wonderful thing, and for the family to know, you know, the church family here, you know, heard this, and we want to be able to have your child as part of the community and not to go away. So.
Yeah, so thank you, Lynette. In the future, you know, let me say in front of the camera before, pass this back. I'm going to put it on mute. Pass that back to Roland while I stay here in front of the cameras. Oh, Nancy, turn on to green. I just wanted to say that over the past years, we often will use part of our Christmas offering or other holiday offering to help support the ministry of Tiny Tots, and it's primarily gone into their operating budget. And if we had financial sustainability, we could use that kind of offering to fund the scholarship fund, right, specifically to aid, you know, make it a much more specific thing. And I do appreciate I'd like the board to talk about how we would do prayer requests from the Tiny Tots families and integrate them in our prayer ministry. All right. Nancy.
Yes, I'm Nancy Porteous Thomas, and I am just delighted to hear about this the possibility of having this wonderful program. The ministry of the church can be really expanded, and I just see limitless possibilities. My background is both in public health, school nursing, community health. I'm an RN, PHN, active licenses in both. I worked in architectural design for the last 20 years on the Central Coast of California. And I really appreciate the comments that everyone has made today in contributing to thoughts on this. This area is in great need. I know personally, with so many families that I've worked with in this community, there are only 16% of a working population that makes a living wage in this area. That's stunning to me. That is not different. I think it's probably worse than when I left 30 years ago. So there is a tremendous need here. And we obviously do want to grow the population of this congregation. These young families, if we were able to reach them and to bring them in, understanding what it is they need from us, I think that is a tremendous way to think about growing the population of this church as our older members leave us and will leave us with their wisdom. We need younger people. So anyway, I'm on board. In any way you need my assistance, and I'm very excited about this. I also want to say that is it $1.7 million? That is not very much money. I know I'm coming from an area where expenses are higher, but it's still in this area. I mean, you can't build anything for that. So it's that we're looking for. So there are a lot of expenses that we're going to have to factor in here. In addition, we also have some really excellent nonprofit organizations in this community that we could work together with to supplement. Dr. Grandison was talking about the psychological and social supports systems and services that are available here. We could dovetail right into some of those, and I mean that's a lot of the work that I did. Was connecting people to services, and that being able to just sit down with the families to have them know that we actually care about their life. That was my job in the families. Children cannot succeed in a school until their other needs are met, and that was my focus. Getting them the services they need, getting the parents the services they need, not just the children the services they need. So there's a huge, huge benefit I see all around for this congregation.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Dr. Nygaard, did you want to say, Roland, were you raising your hand? Okay. Okay.
A couple of comments.
Okay.
Joni Sosowski said that there is a percentage of families that can come to the program through county pay, CAPP.
Right.
Jessica Barrios just said thanks for having this wonderful meeting, and Biggie Higginbotham said excellent explanations of the process going forward. Thank you for the thought and study that has already begun. So, right. Our online community chiming in.
Thank you. Yes, as Joni has been on our church staff until recently, and so she's bringing up the fact that families can apply for grants from the county. And so we always have a number of slots for that as well. And so Barbara is very good about working with the county to make sure the paperwork gets signed and turned in a timely way so that the cash flow as regular. So we will continue that, and that is a helpful way to serve lower income families. All right. Yes.
I have a question about the Tiny Tots current budget because I'm not at all familiar with it. What kind of expenses for use of the facilities does Tiny Tots include now?
I'm going to give that to the treasurer.
Because rental of space in downtown is between $15 and $20 a square foot. That's a ballpark, depending on what facilities. So I'm wondering how the cost of facilities plays in the budget or doesn't play in the budget.
So, Carl, why don't you answer that question?
I think the objective of the operating budget of Tiny Tots is to cover all of their direct expenses, of course, salary and equipment and supplies and things. In addition, any shared expenses, insurance, workers' comp insurance, those sorts of things, Tiny Tots pays its share of those shared expenses. Utilities, we don't have separate meters for the Tiny Tots rooms or anything, but we have a long-standing split of 30%. All utilities are paid 30% in the Tiny Tots budget and 70% in the church operating budget, which, you know, common sense says is a fairly fair split. Mm-hmm. There is no specific rent charge, but again, any expenses, including utilities, we try to put in the Tiny Tots operating budget to cover.
So one of the ways we think about the rent thing is we don't charge the United Women's rent to have their meetings, and we don't charge Sunday school program for rent, and we don't charge preschool rent because it is a ministry of the congregation. From the trustees' perspective, I've noticed in meetings that if there's something that needs to be repaired in the building specifically for them, or they're asking for things to be built, their budget pays for that. But other kinds of repairs, we either pay for it as a church or we split it with them depending on what it is. So if it's something just unique for the preschool, they cover it. But if it's infrastructure to the building, because we use that space for our own children's ministry as well, the church will pay for it. I'm sorry, did you want to say something? You're shaking your head, but I don't know which way.
Those facilities are not used by the total congregation on a regular basis to any extent.
We use I don't know the name of the rooms, we use one of the downstairs room every Sunday morning for our infant and child care on Sunday morning. And we've had vacation Bible school programs in there before, things like that. So, any other questions? Barbara?
No, I was just saying is, over the years when I first entered the preschool, the tuition was very low. So it was very low. And as I became familiar with the operating budget and things, as the families came in, I would always say, they do this as a community for you. This is a service for you, because the church isn't making a profit. You know, for a long time, we cost them money, right? I was able to increase the capacity so that we should break even or make a little bit of money based on, you know, the size of the rooms. You can fit 16 or 17 in the rooms, and they had it at 12, and then we opened up the other room, which I think was used for storage. It had just changed over, so we have another 8 there. So we went to 42 for our capacity, which is more in alignment. And yet when I first got here too, all of the teachers were making below minimum wage. So we expect a lot from the teachers. They need to have education, they need to have CPR certification, mandated reporter certification. They need to smile through 22 diaper changes every day. You know what I mean? It's, you know, breathe through biting. It's a lot that we ask, and so we did up the wages for the staff, because you can't attract quality staff or keep them without this, and we increased the tuition accordingly with it. So we took it up 10% at a time until now we're almost at a market rate here where we sit, and we're working on developing the quality of the program to serve the community. And You know, I think for a program that's been here since 1965, basically, you know, colleges should be coming through here getting their tips on how we work it, you know, on what does developmentally appropriate practice, what does best practice look like, and we should have that going all the time. And so that's kind of the standard that I based it on. I do have my master's degree in child development, so it's, you know, we're just building it up to be the best possible quality program we can have. And it takes time to build that too. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's been a journey.
Thank you. Thank you, online community, for your enthusiastic comments and questions. And would you thank these leaders who are doing so much work up here? Yeah. They represent boards and volunteers that are going to be busy in the weeks ahead. So let's close in prayer. Oh God, we give you thanks for the ways your Spirit has been moving in us today, for this opportunity that is before us. We pray that you will inspire passion in our hearts to be your agents of the gospel in the lives of these families, and that you will inspire us with ways that we can listen and come alongside them, that their families might thrive, that they might know your love, mercy, grace, and intentions for them. We acknowledge our online community. We thank you for weaving us together, and we ask for your guidance in the weeks and months ahead, that we will be faithful stewards of all that you've entrusted to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our informational meeting. More to come.